Hello there, welcome to the Football Bloc. My name is Brandon. Today, we're going to look back at my predictions for the 2023 Gold Cup Quarterfinals. So if that sounds interesting, let's hop right into it.
One step beyond.
So the Gold Cup Quarterfinals has come to a close. We only have 4 teams left. Let's look back at all these quarterfinal results, see how my predictions went, and see what happened in each of these matches. But let's first address the elephant in the room. Yes, I am wearing a Mexico national team jersey. Yes, I own a Mexico national team jersey, despite being a proud American and a very big fan of the USMNT. But there's a method behind this madness. For one, my friend convinced me to get this shirt because it's an iconic shirt, right? This is a shirt that, despite not being worn at the World Cup at all, is going to be talked about 20, 30 years from now. Also, I'm not thinking about it from an American point of view. I'm thinking about it from a collector's point of view. There's lots of shirts of teams that I have that I don't really like. For example, I have 3 Real Madrid jerseys. I have 2 Bayern jerseys, 2 PSG jerseys. Those are all teams I don't like. But from a collector's point of view, and then also from an aesthetic point of view, I mean, you gotta admit, this is a beautiful jersey. So I got a good deal on it, and I was like, okay, I gave in to the temptation. But with that out of the way, let's look at these 4 matches here. The first match we're gonna look at is Qatar versus Panama. This was a very interesting match because obviously Qatar is not from CONCACAF. They are not from North America. They're actually in the Middle East, but they're a guest in this tournament. And it was also very interesting to look at these two these two teams going up against each other because they have wildly contrasting styles. Panama is, a very attack-heavy team. They like to just play a wide and open game, attack, versus Qatar, typical Carlos Queiroz team, super defensive, super pragmatic, and they're able to find success through that. But Qatar is going into this tournament with a C squad. And one thing that I completely forgot to mention in my predictions video is that in this match, even though it's not just a C squad, it's the reserves of the C squad, because almost half their team is missing this match through suspension, through yellow cards, through red cards, other stuff like that, because of how violent they were in the last 2 games. Really all their games so far of this tournament. In the last match, they had a extremely hard-fought 1-0 victory over Mexico, which was able to propel them into the knockout stage. And in many ways, I think that was a Pyrrhic victory, because Panama in this match came away with a 4-0 victory. One of the best individual performances of any team throughout this entire Gold Cup. And yes, we saw, a 6-0 win for the U.S. Against Trinidad and Tobago and St. Kitts and the Nevis. We saw Jamaica completely blow out St. Kitts and Nevis 5-0. But I think this performance here is better because of the level of opposition. Panama was completely unplayable. I think they started off the match much better. Qatar, you can just tell that this back line, where most other guys were missing through suspension, was kind of a patchwork back line. These guys who are not used to playing together. Even Almoez Ali up top. This is his first game of the tournament. It's the first time he's ever played a tournament, because I believe he was coming back from injury. He was the top goal scorer of the last Gold Cup, and yet he barely got a sniff of the ball this time around, just because the team, there was so much disorientation, and Panama just ate that up. And it's not to say this was all due to Qatar playing bad. I think Panama was very, very good. I've been talking about this so many times throughout these videos for this tournament. Panama's strength is on their wings, and then being able to put dangerous balls into the box. And that was the first goal for Panama in the first half. They came away with a 1-0 win, or 1-0 lead. The ball came over the top to Barcenas, who was able to have a really nice header into the box. Second half started. I think Panama, they were a little tired after how intense they were in the first half. but Qatar went for it. Qatar opened up the game, and they really tried to hit Panama, but they completely opened up their back line, and Panama, is particularly Ismail Diaz, who had a wonderful game. He was able to bag a hat trick. He scored 3 goals over the course of, I want to say, maybe like 15, 20 minutes. Completely tore apart Qatar's defense. This did not look like the Qatar that won the Asian Cup or that performed well at the last Gold Cup or even at the Copa America or the Arab Cup. This looked like the Qatar that completely embarrassed themselves at the 2022 World Cup. It came away 4-0 victory for Panama here. My prediction was that Panama was going to win 2-1. I thought that Panama would play really well, and then Qatar would be able to grab a late minute equalizer, and then Panama would grab it in extra time. Obviously, I got the right team going through, but I underestimated, how disoriented this Qatari team will be and how powerful Panama is. Now, let's go on to the next match. On that same day, we had Costa Rica versus Mexico. Very high-profile matchup, 2 of the biggest teams historically from this region. Mexico going into this match started off the tournament very well, even though there was all this chaos going on behind the scenes. But in their last match, it was very, very poor 1-0 loss to Qatar. On the flip side, Costa Rica started the tournament terribly, losing to Panama, tying El Salvador, not even being able to score a goal against El Salvador. Then they were able to drop 6 goals on Martinique in a very exciting game that was back and forth. And yes, they did score 6, but they conceded 4. Very, very open game. This match here, I think that Costa Rica played better than they did in the opening 2 matches, but it was not enough to overcome Mexico. I think, as we said multiple times throughout this tournament so far, this is a very old Costa Rican team in some aspects, and then in other aspects, it's a very young and inexperienced team. There's some veterans that have been around that probably shouldn't be in the team anymore, but there's not sufficient enough replacements, and then there are some young and very inexperienced guys in this team as well. As chaotic as Mexico can be, they just have much more talent. The team is much more cohesive. It wasn't a perfect performance from Mexico. I think the first half, things looked a little shaky. Costa Rica did have some really good chances, but it never felt that Costa Rica was going to come out on top. Even if somehow they came away with a win, it would have been a very uneasy, kind of lucky win. Mexico dominated the match, and then in the second half, they were able to score off a penalty. I think it was a very soft penalty, if I'm being honest. But that being said, Mexico was the better team, the more proactive team. They were creating chances. Orbelin Pineda scored the penalty. And then at that moment, I think Costa Rica kind of lost it. Their defense lacked all types of composure and shape. They did have some chances going forward, but they left themselves open at the back. There was a very, very quick Mexico counterattack, a very well put together goal, which was put away by Eric Sanchez, and that was pretty much it, 2-0. Very standard win. Again, not a perfect performance from Mexico, but it was a very necessary performance. Same concept with their opening 2 matches. Not perfect, particularly defensively, but they got the win when they needed to. They got the result that they needed ultimately. My prediction was that Costa Rica was going to win 4-3. I thought it was going to be a crazy game. I thought it was going to be similar to their game against Martinique. That obviously did not come true. I think Costa Rica going forward was dangerous at times, but it wasn't enough, and Mexico ultimately was just a better team. They just got outclassed here. So let's look on to the next match. We have Guatemala versus Jamaica, and this was a game which I also thought was going to be interesting because these are 2 underdog teams. Guatemala, I don't think most people really predicted them to come out of the group. They had a sluggish win over Cuba, but still, a win's a win. And they looked kind of lost up front against Canada, but they were able to grab a draw off of them and a clean sheet as well. And then they had a very hard-fought, very exciting win over Guadeloupe in the last match. And Guadeloupe, was a very tough opponent. They were carrying all that momentum into this match against Jamaica, who tied the United States in the first match, a game where both teams were kind of figuring themselves out as well as the other team. And then they had 2 lopsided victories against Trinidad and Tobago as well as St. Kitts and the Nevis, which, they scored a lot of goals. They had some good play, but how much can you really take away from that considering how poor both of those opponents were? So I thought that this match would be very tight, very hard to decide, and ultimately that is what happened. because in the first half, I think, Jamaica had more shots, but Guatemala looked really dangerous at times. It was an open game. It was back and forth. Both teams were going either end of the pitch. It was attack after another attack after another attack. And I think that even though at first Jamaica looked a little shaky, this style of game ultimately benefited them, though, because Guatemala, as their team is structured, is much more defensive team. They had a very strong defense. Like, they've only conceded 2 goals prior to this match versus Jamaica. Their strength is in attack. They have all their Premier League players up top. So for Guatemala to have any realistic chance of winning this game, well, they should have essentially played like how they have throughout the rest of the tournament, being much more conservative, much more pragmatic, kind of putting defense first. I don't really know why they went for the game. It was exciting, but there's only one clear winner here, and that's ultimately what happened. I think as the match went on, the Guatemalan defenders got tired. They were kind of lacking composure, and then Jamaica scored. Amari Bell was able to score a very nice goal, very nice finish, and Jamaica was able to hold out for the victory. That being said, Guatemala did have one very close chance to equalize, but it produced a wonderful save, probably the save of the tournament, from Andre Blake, who is an amazing player, in my opinion, the best player on that Jamaican team, at least for his performances within the Jamaican national team. So it ended up being 1-0 to Jamaica. My prediction was that it was going to be 1-1. Jamaica take it away on penalties. Obviously, I got the score wrong. I was close, though, and I was correct in how the match would play out, and for the most part, a very tight, intense game. I will say I haven't seen enough from this Jamaica side. They're going into the semifinals. I think that they've been playing good, but the expectations were that they were going to be the best team in this tournament. I don't think we've seen enough of them so far. So let's look onto the last match, and we had a massive Titan heavyweight clash between the U.S. and Canada, a rematch of the Nations League final from only a month ago. However, obviously both these squads are very different. They're going into this with very different mindsets. Canada has actually been in pretty poor form, in my opinion. They tied Guadeloupe 2-2. They tied Guatemala 0-0, and then they did come away with a 4-2 win over Cuba, but they looked a little shaky at times, and they did concede 2 goals. Versus the United States, it was a kind of patchwork performance against Jamaica, kind of a disoriented performance against Jamaica. They came away with a 1-1 result, but after that, it was 2 6-0 hammerings against Trinidad and Tobago and St. Kitts and Nevis. But again, you can't take as much away from that considering the quality gap. I thought that going into this match that, the U.S. had the momentum on their side. Overall, I think they have a much deeper squad, even though it is a reserve squad for the most part. I thought that they're going to blow away Canada, and that's ultimately not what happened. I think Canada, even though the team had been playing so poor up until this point, the mentality switches when you go into the knockout rounds. Not to mention, you have to give a lot of credit to John Herdman, great manager for Canada. I think that, the first half of this match was in the U.S. favor. I think the U.S. played better. They had more chances, but it wasn't enough. It was kind of a sluggish performance in many ways. I liked what I was seeing overall, but it didn't have that finishing touch. Meanwhile, Canada did look a little dangerous on occasion, and they probably should have had a penalty there. Going into the second half, it was more the same, but the U.S., I think, made some serious changes. B.J. Callahan had some good substitutions. He put on Cade Caldwell. He also put on Brandon Vasquez. Jesus Fajeda got pushed out to the right. There's a few other substitutions here and there as well, but I think those really reinvigorated the team. At that point, it was all USA. I think we were pushing for victory. We came close on numerous occasions. Finally, we broke the deadlock. A wonderful header, an amazing header after an even better cross, and arguably an even better cross. The ball was whipped in from Jones, who was playing as the left back. Brandon Vasquez, the substitute, came off the bench, scored like I said, wonderful header, his 3rd goal of the tournament. It was in the 86th minute. I thought that was it. USA was going to come away with a, well-deserved 1-0 win, but Miles Robinson decided to handball the ball in the box for the second time this match. This time he was not bailed out by a foul in the build-up. Canada was awarded a penalty, and I believe it was the 95th, 96th minute. Victoria stepped up, good penalty. It's 1-1, goes into extra time. From that moment on, I think it was more of the same. U.S. was pushing for the winner. They looked a more proactive team. They looked like the team that was likely to score. But unfortunately, defensive mistake, Canada was able to break, and they scored a really nice goal on the breakaway. Mistake from Matt Miazga as well on defending that, but the goal kind of came out of nowhere. It's very much against the run of play. You know, Canada is going away with a 2-1 lead at this point. Very unthinkable almost. And then luckily the U.S. was able to equalize 2-2. Kind of a scrappy goal. I mean, the ball's like bouncing around in the box. Gianluca Busio, he's the one that had the shot deflected off the goalkeeper, St. Clair, and then bounced off a Canadian defender and went in. St. Clair had a wonderful game in particular, but it's 2-2, went to penalties. I think Matt Turner then saved. He showed up for when his team needed him most. He made two wonderful saves, one against Victoria in particular, who scored on him in regulation. I think that save was really good. The U.S. come away, I think, deserved winners in the penalty shootout. But I think Canada did get lucky to bring it out to penalties. Now, you can call me biased or whatever, but I think that U.S. was clearly the better team, and those two goals from Canada, for the most part, were relatively lucky. That being said, it wasn't as dominant of a performance as I thought it would be from the U.S. At times, this team very much looked like a team that's full of fringe players and youth players. There was moments where they're misplacing passes. They're, making runs that they shouldn't be making. They do everything right to get into the box, and then when it comes to either taking a shot or making that final pass, they make the wrong decision. And these are things that you would kind of expect from a team like this, full of fringe players and youth players. But ultimately, the U.S. lives on to fight another day. My prediction was that the U.S. would crush Canada 4-1. Obviously, that did not happen, but I did correctly predict the U.S. to go through in the end. Anyway, guys, let me know what your reaction to all these matches were. Let me know if you had any predictions, how they went. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share this video with a friend. But anyway, guys, my name is Brandon. This has been the Football Bloc. Hope you guys have a nice rest of your night.
One step beyond.